So just a short video talking a little bit more about knife sighting, and I was talking about the fact that having a large blade in my last video, I put the link below, having a large blade enables you to encounter blows or cuts, stabs, whatever they are, that are coming in and actually slash the person's arm, hit the person's weapon in some cases, sometimes their hand, sometimes their arm. But with a shorter blade you can't necessarily do that, and a number of people made the completely valid point that very often in a knife attack scenario you're going to get stabbed before you get the opportunity to do anything with your weapon, assuming you had a weapon. And obviously I'm not condoning anybody to walk around the streets carrying knives if it's not legal where you live. Very clearly in the UK you can't walk around with a Bowie knife. I'm mostly talking about this from the point of interest of being in places where it is legal, or in historical periods where it was legal or was done regardless. Okay, and one point that so the people said, several people said, quite rightly so, that very often you'll get attacked, you'll get stabbed before you have a chance to get your weapon out, and that is absolutely true. I completely agree. When I talk about knife versus knife scenarios, I'm really talking about a situation where for some reason the other person's got their weapon out, you've got their weapon out, so it's almost like a duel, okay? And that's purely because it makes the dialogue easier to compare like with like. If it's an asymmetrical scenario where you're jumped from behind and stabbed repeatedly before you could access a weapon or improvise a weapon or fight with your bare hands or whatever you need to do in that scenario, or die, then very clearly it changes the context of many things. However, assuming that you get stabbed once or twice and are still able to fight back and are able to get a weapon out, in that scenario then it becomes a little bit more similar once again to the starting point where I started in that previous video. The other thing I'd say, and I've made this point in previous videos and I will continue to make it, I get genuinely slightly annoyed when people imply that anything you try to do to defend yourself from a knife attack is doomed to failure, and that in a knife attack you're going to get stabbed a lot and probably die. And that, I think, is a kind of like, if you just give up before you've started, then really what's the point in, what's the point in any kind of self-defense? I realise that lots of American viewers will go, oh, just carry, you carry a pistol, blah blah blah, carry a gun versus knife. But even in that scenario, if we go back to the previous thing I was talking about, if someone jumps you from behind and starts stabbing you, unfortunately we see it in terrorist situations, then you can't necessarily access your gun, or even if you can access your gun, you can get the safety off, you can't necessarily get the muzzle of that firearm to bear on your opponent. So if you're ambushed, then, or just if you're in a brawl, you can't necessarily just shoot at someone. And equally, the other problem with shooting, I'm not going to go into this topic because it's not something I'm specialised in at all, and I'm not going to, but another problem with shooting is who else is around. And if you're in kind of like a situation where lots of people are around, you can't just start shooting indiscriminately, or shooting where bullets might pass through someone and then hit your friend behind them and this kind of stuff. So this type of self-defense situation is very complicated, and I never want anyone to think that I oversimplify it, or indeed for them to oversimplify it. Every single context, there's my favourite word, every single context is peculiar to itself, and can really, if we're going to be really anal and pedantic about points when we're talking about knife versus knife, then really you could take it down to the nth degree and go, well, yeah, but then if this, if that, if the other, then it changes everything. If we're in a vacuum, if we're you can get really silly about it. But the fundamental fact is how you're attacked dictates everything after that, and indeed what physical state you're in after the moment you're attacked, which you can't predict, and in a way you can maybe psychologically prepare for, but you can't really physically prepare for it, maybe. But anyway, so just there we go, there's some points coming off that previous video, and I really don't, I want you to take that previous video for as it is. It's just talking about as physical objects large knife, yes, it's obvious a larger weapon has an advantage over a smaller weapon, but genuinely I believe some people don't necessarily realise this. They think that a SAS dagger, Fairbairn Sykes dagger, might be a better knife in a knife fight, like a knife duel, than a massive Bowie knife. And actually I would massively disagree with that. I think the massive Bowie knife is far more advantageous over the Fairbairn Sykes, because you can do so many more things with this, and you can do things to the person who's trying to get close enough to stab you in the body before they even are close enough to stab you in the body, whereas they can't really do that very well to you. Anyway, there's some more things to think about, and as always, I remember that I realised that the whole topic of knife defence and the use of knives and, you know, carrying knives and all this kind of stuff is hugely emotive, and it's very different in different countries legally and in socially. And so I realise it's a very complicated topic, but we're looking at it from an academic standpoint, and I'm never recommending anyone to do anything. Okay, there's my legal disclaimer. Cheers, folks. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe, follow us on Facebook. You can buy t-shirts through Spreadshirt, support us on Patreon, or follow us on Pinterest. Thank you.